Hi, Women on Fire. Today I have a delightful guest for you. Her name is Vinka Wong, or she's really known as Vinka, as that's her brand really. And it's nice and simple. I love that name. She's a functional nutritionist whose mission is to help everyone look and feel their best. She uses modern and traditional diagnostic tools, including blood work analysis, genetics, hormone testing, and the symptoms of the body to diagnose root cause issues for the women and, well, men and women actually, but we're talking about women, right? For the women that she works with. She's a self-professed science geek, and she says she gets such a buzz out of helping her clients set and reach their health goals by learning how to implement realistic diet and lifestyle changes. I hope you enjoy this interview. Hi, Vinka.
Hello.
Welcome to Women on Fire. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I love doing these.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Well, it's about talking. So I'm in my element.
And you love talking.
Yeah, I
Which
know.
is what these interviews are made for. So we love that.
I know. And my husband gets quite excited too because I get all my talk juice out now, and then by the time I get home, he gets the TV in peace without having to pause it. It's so good.
So you're a functional nutritionist.
Yeah.
So can we explain to our listeners exactly what that means? For those that
I know
aren't?
it's not something you hear every day, but it's really just, it's kind of code for geek, but it's so it really is, as when you do functional nutrition, it's about understanding the why. So doing a lot of analytics to figure out why someone may not be feeling well, whether that's kind of fatigue, autoimmune conditions, cancer. And, you look at all sorts of elements like blood testing, genetics, hormonal testing, symptoms your body's giving you, and kind of analyze all of that to kind of put together, what we're going to do to help someone feel better. So, it's really just understanding the human body and its complexities in every way. So it keeps my brain firing at all times. It's awesome. Yeah.
It's pretty wonderful. Hey, I love the whole functional integrative thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I am as a health coach, and I think we've talked about it's great if you can find a medical practitioner who's functional as well, because it's more about looking at root causes rather than writing out a script. And
I know, and treating the symptom, And it's like, and I think that's when you look at the body, it's never, you may have an issue, for example, in the kidneys or thyroid, but it may not have started there. So it's actually understanding the whole body and where those issues are underlying and coming from. So that root cause, it's that medical investigator stuff. I love digging in and finding out what's wrong and what's going on. So it's cool.
yeah, I know, it's really exciting. And I'm excited to talk to you today because I asked you if you would come on board and talk about thyropause or the link between thyroid and perimenopause, because it really is a thing. It's so common, and it's so important that women understand that.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, which is amazing, I mean, I knew you were in peri anyway, but then it turned out that you'd had your own thyroid issues. So
I know.
it's something that you know a lot about, right?
Yeah, so I've been very passionate about this topic, and actually, when I was very early stages of studying and just had my children, is kind of when all things changed for me with my thyroid, and it, in a way, it was kind of good because it actually sent me on a little adventure to learn a lot more about it. And I'd been to the GP and told that my thyroid looked normal, but I was like, I was putting on like 7 kilos when I looked at a fruit bowl, and I was like, there's something not quite right. And I know my mum has Hashimoto's as well, which is the autoimmune condition for underactive thyroid, hypothyroidism. So I knew the signs, and I knew that something wasn't quite right. So I went and started doing some more digging, and have looked at so much to do with what we need to do to look after our thyroid, how to really analyse it and see whether it's doing well. And then looking at the key times in life when we have to be more cautious with our thyroid and think about what's happening. And menopause is a big one, and I think it goes unnoticed because some of the symptoms of an underactive thyroid are very similar to menopause. We start gaining weight, we lose our eyebrows, we have all these things happen, we feel a bit lower in our mood, all these things that an underactive thyroid do. So it can kind of go unnoticed, and a lot of women just go, oh, I've just been told it's menopause, go home. And so I think getting more understanding, more testing and things around this time is so important. It's so cool to know more.
And because the standard test, because I say this all the time, I'm sounding like a bit of a broken record actually, but the standard test measures TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, but we need more than that, don't we? We need the free, I'll let you.
I know. Oh, it's why I get like, this is my bugbear. I get like so passionate about this conversation. But when we go and get our test done, and if anyone's listening has had their test done, what we usually get tested is the thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. And that is the brain telling the thyroid what to do. And, you know, like it can be sometimes like my children in the morning when I'm telling them to get ready for school and putting their shoes on, they may not listen. So just because the thyroid has been told what to do doesn't actually mean that it's actually listened to the brain. So just measuring the thyroid stimulating hormone that the brain's sending the thyroid isn't enough to know whether your thyroid's actually, listened to that instruction and produced enough thyroid hormone. So, you know, that's one part of the issue that we have here, and in many countries too, not just New Zealand. In Australia, but our TSH is also a value that is worked out kind of based on averages of other people's bloods that you're comparing against. And in New Zealand, the ranges that we use for TSH are quite different to other countries. So our TSH, for example, is normal if you've got a TSH ranging between 0.5 and 5, whereas in some other countries, the TSH range can be 0.5 to 2.5. So we are quite different with where we will diagnose someone with hypothyroidism. So a high TSH value is where you get diagnosed with hypothyroidism. So the higher the TSH value, the slower your thyroid is. I kind of think of it like someone yelling at you, me and my kids, for example. The louder that your thyroid's been yelled at from your brain, the slower your thyroid is. So in New Zealand, to get diagnosed with hypothyroidism and underactive thyroid.
Can I just ask you if this is the same for Australia, because we work with Australia as well?
Yes, it is. I don't actually know what the ranges they use, but it's pretty similar to New Zealand.
Okay.
And every lab is slightly different because we use the averages for that region. And so this is again where I guess the problem lies in that we average blood tests and compare it, to that group. So if the group is all elevated, then that will become the normal range. The normal range is usually about 95% of a population. So to be on the outside of a range, you have to be really extreme. And I don't want to go into the science, but it's like they use the good old bell curve. But it's just, so we need to look at the health in terms of blood ranges for what you optimally need for that organ to function. And for a thyroid, personally, I think the TSH needs to be between 0.5 and 2. And so that's where one of the things I think we're going so wrong with testing in Australia and New Zealand is that we're not using that first step in correct ranges, and we're just using TSH and we're not actually testing the thyroid hormones. And that's, a real big miss. And so whenever I do a thyroid panel, it's actually 4 tests that I test. And so TSH is definitely really important and we test it. But then it's testing the 2 thyroid hormones, T4 and T3, and looking at those ranges and seeing whether your body's produced enough of those thyroid hormones. And then the 4th test is so vital as well to know is your thyroid antibodies. And so thyroid antibodies are when the body has made antibodies that attack the thyroid. So the more antibodies you have, it's think of them like bullets that are firing at your thyroid. So the more thyroid antibodies you've got, the more holes you've got in your thyroid, and so being shot at. So, if your thyroid isn't producing enough thyroid hormone, you have to understand, why is that happening? And if you've got thyroid antibodies, then the chances are that you've got the autoimmune conditions, either Hashimoto's or Graves, and therefore that is actually an immune issue, not your thyroid. The thyroid's just the victim. And so when you're treating your thyroid, you have to look at your immune system at this point. Whereas if your thyroid hormones are low and you have no thyroid antibodies, then it's actually, well, what can I do to support my thyroid now? Because that's actually where it's starting from. So you have to know about the thyroid antibodies, and 60 to 80% of the studies that look at women who have an underactive thyroid have Hashimoto's. So I see so many people, my clients, come and see me who have been on thyroxine or Synthroid, the medication for an underactive thyroid, and they have never had their thyroid antibodies tested, and they don't feel any different when they're on the medication. They still feel like they're gaining weight and that they're tired. And the reason is they've still got the autoimmune condition that hasn't been put to bed yet. So, it's so vital. And we'll talk about more what happens at menopause, but, it's a great time to test. All of those, yeah.
Because it's it really comes to the fore then, doesn't it? And because the thyroid loves progesterone, and one of the hallmarks of peri is lower progesterone before anything happens to estrogen. Hey?
Yeah.
But can you explain? Because there's the free T4, the free T3, and the reverse T3.
Yep.
And this part I always get confused. T4 is the inactive hormone, and T3 converts.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're doing so well. I love that you know this. So T4 is the kind of storage form. So 90% of what your thyroid makes is going to be made into T4, and it stores in our thyroid here, and it's ready to be converted when we're ready to use it. So then when it's ready to be used in our body, it converts into T3, which is the active form of thyroid hormone. And that's the little guy that goes swimming around your body and lands on cells and gets that actioning. And so what we want is a good production of T4, your storage form in your thyroid, waiting for you to then get converted into T3. And when I look at a majority of my clients' bloods, what I see is that storage form of thyroid hormone is very, very low. Like I'd say on an average, 90% of people have low T4. It's amazing. So even though their TSH look great, when I look at their T4, it's really, really low. So most people aren't getting enough thyroid hormone. And so T3 is that active form, and reverse T3, he's a bit sneaky. So reverse T3 is the mirror image of T3, but he's kind of the brakes for the thyroid. So, it's kind of like if you were to drive your car with someone putting the accelerator on and there was no brakes, it would be quite dangerous. So reverse T3 is designed to slow the thyroid down and is a good thing. But however, when we're under a lot of stress, thinking everyone in their 40s, or anyone, anytime actually, we make a lot of reverse T3. And reverse T3 will go and land on cells and block your T3, which is the active form going in. So, when we're making stress hormones, cortisol, we make a lot of reverse T3. And so even if you've got heaps of T3 in your blood, this is where bloods don't always show you the whole picture with this, is that your T3 looks great in your bloods, but you don't feel like that. It's because you're probably making a huge amount of reverse T3 that has come along and put the brakes on your thyroid hormone production. And so, stress is a big deal for the thyroid. And, the thyroid goes to the pituitary gland as kind of its little pathway. So it goes pituitary, thyroid, but also this pituitary gland goes to our adrenals. And so that axis shares the thyroid and our ovaries actually. So, if the pituitary gland is really busy sending messages to your adrenal glands to make stress hormones, it does so at the expense of making this beautiful thyroid hormone. So not only are you getting less thyroid hormone production, but now you're also getting a lot of reverse T3. You can see how that picture kind of ends up with a really slow looking thyroid, and people will present with okay-ish looking buds perhaps, but if stress is there, it won't be really reflective of what your body's actually getting used. So it's quite interesting. Yeah, good question.
Another reason, because I'm always talking about how we need to nurture ourselves during the menopause, at any stage of menopause, but that's a big example of why, right?
I know, and you think about the most menopausal woman at the moment, and we're kind of, I'm in this group, it's so much fun. It's just, if you're kind of, 40 with young kids still at home, you still got a full-time job, you're busy, and then, you start adding in the change of hormones with menopause, that concoction alone is pretty stressful. So you can see that most of us are living on kind of adrenaline and cortisol hormones. So actually the impact of that on all our hormones, particularly our thyroid, is quite huge. So we have to, I think a lot of us want to just take a pill to kind of help with the stress. We actually have to not be the yes lady. We have to take time for ourselves. And, I always teach my clients, and you'll probably had this in another podcast, about pace breathing and breathing in general, because it's one of the most incredible tools we have to let our insides know that there's no tiger in the room and that we're okay. And it's not really tricking the system, and I always say to people, it's not like the downward dog yoga pose. You can pull it out in the supermarket, you can pull it out on the phone when people are talking too long, whatever it is. Deep breath, and you're like instantly getting that flow into your parasympathetic nervous system to let you know you're safe. So it's pretty amazing tool that we have to help the thyroid and help menopause.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I teach breathwork. I love
Do you?
breathwork. Yeah.
Ooh,
It's
okay.
amazing.
I need to know about that later. Yeah.
So, and can you explain, because underactive thyroid, I always say sluggish thyroid, sluggish body, right?
Yeah.
Sluggish metabolism,
Yeah.
weight gain,
I
which
know.
is one of our ladies' biggest
Yeah.
challenges.
Yeah, I know, and to be honest, and I'm a nutritionist, and so obviously when I started gaining weight, that wasn't kind of the look that I was aiming for to get clients. So it was like, hello. But, with regards to the thyroid, one of the key symptoms for an underactive thyroid is weight gain. Generally, it's all overweight too, kind of face, body. So, certain hormones like insulin, for example, will make us gain weight around the middle. With the thyroid, it tends to be all over. But so weight gain is huge. But I have had people who have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism and had no weight gain whatsoever, and actually on the other side,
really?
yeah. And I've even had hyperthyroid, which is a fast thyroid, who have gained weight. So it's not a fastidious rule that we have to stick to, but on a whole, most people with an underactive thyroid will gain weight. And then if you were to touch my hands, that because I've been obviously with someone with hypothyroidism, they're always cold. Like we suffer with the our internal temperature being warm. Then you add menopause, you go hot, cold. So much fun. I feel like I'm on a complete circus ride all the time. But so cold feeling, particularly hands and feet, just kind of feeling like you're always wearing an extra jersey when everyone else isn't, is kind of a key one. Anxiety and depression are a massive area with an underactive thyroid, and I think the statistics now are around 1 in 6 people who are diagnosed with depression is actually an underactive thyroid. So if anyone suffers with any mental health, I'd definitely be checking their thyroid comprehensively with all those tests we were talking about. Then there is the kind of coarser hair or hair falling out that we can get. That last third of the eyebrow, that's on the end of your eyebrow there, that is quite specific to the thyroid. And I know a lot of us think we've overplucked in the 80s, but it actually can be the thyroid that's caused us to lose that hair there. And what's the other one? Skin's kind of getting drier, nails more brittle, and just kind of memory fog. Brain fog, memory loss, and some of us can struggle with sleep as well. And women who are in those fertile years can find that infertility is an issue as well. And I think the thing with thyroid is it's so far-reaching in its symptoms because most of the cells in our body require thyroid, and so when we get low on our production of thyroid hormone, our body has to go, well, who do I give it to? I have to make your heart pump, that's pretty important, but do I have to make you have a good mood or good energy? That's the other one, energy, I forgot. Low energy is big.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, fatigue is huge. So everyone is quite different. If you lined up all us hypothyroid clients, every one of us will present with different symptoms. For me, it was just really weight, whereas somebody else, it may be, depression, anxiety, or somebody else it's insomnia. So symptoms are one way of getting a head start on figuring out whether your thyroid's okay or not, but then definitely follow it up with some good blood testing to see. So use all the tools you've got basically to kind of see how yours is doing. But if there's and with that too, just to say, sorry, there are kind of 2 times in life that I really recommend doing extra testing, blood tests around your thyroid. And one is when you have children, because our thyroid is quite vulnerable at this time, and some of us have children more than once. So testing your thyroid around this time, and then menopause. And we were touching on that at the beginning of the podcast, is that menopause is a big hormonal shift and is a time in life when our thyroid can become susceptible to going into an underactive state. So it's really important that we check it then. And I think when you learn about the human body, you realize that nothing in the body just hangs out by itself. We're all working together, and as women, we're so complex with our hormonal system because we have the opportunity to make babies, which is pretty amazing, making human beings in here. So to be able to do that, we have to have all this connection with all our hormones working together. So when we have a big shift in perimenopause and menopause, when we start first losing progesterone and then estrogen, it is a big shock to the thyroid, and it takes a bit of adjustment. And for some people, that can be too much and be thrown into an underactive state. So really important time to have a check.
So do you think that in some instances, I'm just trying to craft this in the right way, but that a hypoactive thyroid, even though it can cross over with perimenopause, it's confusing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Because it can be indicative, perhaps, that you are entering perimenopause, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like all...
I think, yeah, bang on. Like, I always think of perimenopause as actually kind of a window of opportunity, because it highlights where your body needs some love. And so some people may find that memory loss is their biggest thing, for example. So working on your brain health would be great. But if your thyroid was one of the things that starts showing signs of neglect, that's probably not the best word to use, but that, needs some love, then, it may have been sitting there in the background before, but then when perimenopause comes, it just puts on a big neon light over where in your body you need to focus your attention. And I think, that's the advantage we have over men, really, in that we have this ability over this time for our body to give us some signs and clues that it needs some more love. And I think when we use perimenopause and that early menopausal time to listen to what our body's saying, we can get really good health long term, because it really is that kind of critical window we've got to turn things around, and it's such a cool opportunity. And yeah, I think, losing our hormones is never easy, but it was awesome to have them in the first place. So I kind of think, we have so many protective benefits that we get from having estrogen and progesterone in our body. That's why women don't have so many rates of diabetes, for example, because it makes us more insulin sensitive while we have her. But when we lose her, we have a big change we're not used to, but at least we had her for 30 years or whatever it was. So I think it's sad to see them leave, and they definitely make a good entrance out when they go out, but it's like so cool to have at least had them for a while. So yeah, I don't know what your question was. I think I did a Vinkaism and tangent off somewhere else.
But that's a very good positive way to think about it as well.
I know, because it can get quite depressing when you're otherwise. And I think, for those of us that have male partners and you're comparing yourself to how little is changing for them, I know there are stuff changing for them, but, we go through some massive changes. And so a lot of my clients will always reflect on this as a time when they say they don't feel like they know who they are anymore. And they always saying, who is in my body? It doesn't feel like me anymore. And, with the amount of things that are changing, you can understand why that happens, but it's about listening to that and actually learning what we can do to support it so that we can get past the menopausal time and then be in a much better health place. So it is an opportunity. It definitely makes us work for it. And I don't think until you get there, you really appreciate how much of a transition it is.
No.
You can talk all about it and learn all about it, which I did, but until I went through it myself, I was like...
It's like anything.
I know, yeah.
I know. You don't really know what it's like until you've been there.
Yeah, I know. Now it's quite fascinating. I feel like I'm in my own experiment figuring this out. And you learn, our body tells us so often when it's not happy with us. Now because I love Whitakers, I know I should admit that as a nutritionist, but it's my weak point. And
I do 70% plus.
Yeah, most of the time, sometimes. When I'm good. I know, but when I eat chocolate, I will get a hot flush. So it's like the body's like, no, you're not allowed that now. And so it will tell me. And a lot of people say that with wine. If they drink wine, they'll have a night where they don't sleep as well. They'll get more hot flushes and night sweat. And it's like your body's just like, you're not getting away with that anymore. And so we have to be healthy now.
I know.
It's forcing us. I know.
It speaks very loudly.
Yeah, I know.
I always call it a good time to get a health warrant of fitness and overhaul, because you just can't get away with it. So with your thyroid, if it is underactive, there is a lot you can do in terms of beautiful bounty and fresh food. It doesn't all have to be about popping a pill, does it?
No, for myself, my journey, I haven't been medicated. And so there's, I'm not saying that's what everyone can achieve, definitely not, but there is so much we can do through food. And I mean, most of our body works on chemical reactions, and those chemical reactions are fed by nutrients. So, it's not just about the food we eat, but the food we absorb, so good gut health. But the key is getting good nutrients. And when I look at, I've probably looked at over 2,000 women's and men's thyroids now. And when I look at them...
Wow.
I know. I get so excited. I know. I'm so geeky to admit that. But when I look at them, one of the things that's so low all the time is that storage form of thyroid hormone. And that's predominantly made of iodine. So if you were not eating a diet high in iodine, so that's food from the sea, such as fish, seafood, seaweed, and sea salt, then a lot of us are getting deficient in iodine. And the thyroid will always take the most out of the body. It hogs it all. And also as women, we need it for our breast tissue. And it's really amazing antioxidant for our breasts. So if our thyroids aren't getting enough of it, then definitely these puppies aren't either. And so when I've looked at all these thousands of bloods, there's only been a handful of women that and men too, that I've seen with good levels of T4. So it's, it comes down predominantly to diet lacking in iodine. And iodine used to be in our salt. It was a synthetic version, which wasn't obviously ideal, but now we're pretty much lacking it completely in our diet. And our milk vats in Australia and New Zealand used to be rinsed with iodine. Really? As a disinfectant, yeah, but they ban that and use hard chemicals now, of course. So our dairy products used to have a lot of iodine in them as a result. So we're now not eating fish every day or seaweed or sea. You couldn't get enough through sea salt. It'd be nice, but no. So we're kind of needing to think about ways of doing that. I personally love seaweed chips. Making them yourself.
Yeah, I know. Those.
Oh, so good. They take like 5 minutes to make them. I have a video on my website, on my Facebook page, I think, in my dressing gown, which is embarrassing to admit. But it was like,
I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, God, my dressing gown. Yeah. It might not be. It might be one where I'm dressed for a change. But yeah, so iodine is key for the thyroid, and is selenium. There's lots of nutrients that are important, but the two that Brazil nut, yeah.
I always suggest, and I try and do it myself, having a Brazil nut every day.
Yeah, a couple of Brazil nuts a day would be good. Yeah, they range kind of in how much how much selenium's in each of them, but a couple of days kind of generalise, kind of going to get you there. So I know, and then but it's also thinking about the food that you're eating as kind of majority whole food, because if you're eating a lot of inflammatory foods like sugars and refined oils, etc., then that puts a lot of stress on the body and inflammation in the body. And because the thyroid is designed to sense stress, whenever we have a lot of inflammatory foods in our diet, it will sense cell danger basically, and our thyroid won't be able to be utilised. So it's complex, the thyroid. There's a book called The Thyroid Debacle. It's really interesting, and it talks about just because your thyroid's producing thyroid hormone doesn't actually mean your cells are using it, and it comes down to your body feeling like it's safe, so that stress we're talking about, but also making sure that the food we're eating in general is, a highly anti-inflammatory diet. So lots of fruits, veggies, good protein choices, etc. So I mean, it's all the basics we all know. Just sometimes
we all do know them.
I know. Well, just have to remember all the time.
But sometimes you need a nudge, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
And can we talk about, listen to my voice, it's croaking a bit, but can we talk, because I know you have this incredible abundant garden with amazing things in it.
Oh, I know.
Like saffron, which you brought me some, thank you.
I love my garden.
Oh, amazing. But I think you have a very, very strong message there too, don't you, about the soil?
I know, I'm always telling people they need to get dirty. So they need to get into the garden. And it just could be somewhere, but just, the food we have available to us now, unfortunately, is so nutrient deficient, because I think I was reading something not so long ago where if we'd have to eat 8 oranges today to get the vitamin C that our grandmothers would have had to get. So that's, so how we grow our food and how our soil is now so depleted that to get enough nutrients purely from food that we buy is pretty hard. So I always think that if we can grow as many things as possible in a healthy style of growing, then we can get heaps more nutrients out of our food. So and I think the shame too that I see a lot now is when we think about buying organic food, we think we're going to be getting a whole lot of nutrients in that. But you can grow food organically with just NPK fertilizer, nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus. So we need like 70 plus trace minerals in our food. So you can still grow food organically and be healthier because of the no chemicals, but still is deficient in nutrients. So the best way is doing it yourself. And it can, when I started, it was hit and miss with what worked and what didn't. It's just like learn as you go. And it's just the main thing is give good soil love. And once that happens, anything will grow. It's amazing. So I love it. I know. That's my happy time out place in the garden.
It's just incredible to see the abundance. On Instagram, people, follow Vinka on Instagram.
I know.
I'll put a link in the show notes as well. But it is amazing. But that also brings me to It used to be you are what you eat.
Yeah.
Now it's you are what you absorb, right?
Yeah.
Because that can be one reason, but also in midlife, our stomach acid reduces, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And also, so many people have issues with their gut health now, right?
Oh, my
So
gosh.
they're not absorbing the nutrients, and that's a lot of our ladies in our community. It will be, right?
Oh, I'd say that my two biggest complaints would be gut and fatigue, and sometimes the fatigue is driven from the gut. So gut health is deteriorated quite a lot over the last, even since I've been in practice. It's amazing to see the changes. But when we get to around 40, our stomach acid does produce a lot, and so as a result of that, we're not breaking down our food as well and absorbing our nutrients. So, and one of the key things about that is making sure you have good levels of B12 and zinc, because those are really important for stomach acid. But stress decreases that as well. But good gut health, I think I could talk a lot. I always get told off for talking about poo.
I mean, that's a big conversation.
I know, but I think most people don't know that they don't have good gut health. So, yeah, you've got to have a good poo every day. And if it's every 48 hours, it's too long. So everyone should know their poo, and every morning you should assess it. I love a good poo chat, but you probably don't want to talk about that now. But I think, that is our sign of our body is healthy when we see that in the morning or whenever time of day it is for you. But a lot of people don't have good gut health, and some of our thyroid hormone, I think is around about 20% of it, gets activated in the gut. So having good gut health is important for good thyroid hormone too. So yeah, essential. And listen to the signs your body's giving you. It may not be presenting in the gut. It could be feeling sleepy in the afternoon. It could be headaches. It could be even mood issues. Other things that you may not think of are related to your gut. So super important. You love the gut.
So would you recommend fermented foods for that? Because some people are histamine intolerant, right? So they can't deal with fermented foods?
Yeah, and a lot of people, even people who have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, they can react to a lot of the fermented foods because they are producing a lot of gas. But on the whole, for most people, I'd start really slowly if you haven't had them before and build up. So having, for example, a teaspoon of sauerkraut with your lunch, and then moving all the way up to kind of a tablespoon. I now have like half a cup of sauerkraut with my 2 meals a day. I love it, but I use a brand, Wild Fermentary. I'm totally plugging them because they're amazing. I'm not associated anyway, but I love their food. The Wild Fermentary. They're a New Zealand company. A lovely lady runs it, but her sauerkrauts, because sometimes they can taste a little bit like old socks. So hers just tastes delicious. They've got fiery ones, lemon verbena ones, also good. So if you're new to fermented food, they're a good way. But like yogurts are great, miso is awesome, and at the moment I'm making turmeric sodas that are fermented.
Yum.
You can ferment ginger in a soda.
Can I put that link in the show?
Yeah.
And what about gherkins and olives and things like that?
Yum.
Are they fermented? Are they classified as a fermented food?
Probably depends on how they were done. If you can ferment, most pickles are a pickle made out of vinegar and sugar. But if you get a relish that's been fermented, I ferment relishes, but you wouldn't probably buy them on the market. You have to make them yourself.
Okay.
But you can do that, and they taste delicious. You can even make salsas fermented. You just let them sit for a few days with all the herbs and coriander. Oh, so good.
I've tried to make sauerkraut myself though, and it's always a major fail.
I know.
And it's actually technically very simple.
I know, but I'm like you with sauerkraut. I haven't actually mastered sauerkraut myself very well. I've made a couple of batches, but they're never as good as, that's why I buy the sauerkraut. That's just like, for other ferments, I find them much easier. But the sauerkraut, I think it's because it's just cabbage. To get cabbage to taste good at the other end and not get it moldy with it not being attentive is actually quite difficult. For me, I think other people have mastered it. My brother's a pro at this. And so,
really?
I know, I leave him in that charge too.
I can't conquer that or coconut yogurt.
Yeah, I haven't made that for ages actually. That's a goodie too. You reminded me about that. I know. You can add kind of probiotic capsules to coconut yogurt to kind of help it along. But I know, but I think the more diverse range of fermented foods definitely should be having them in most meals. And it's a traditional way of storing our food, and we've kind of lost touch with it. But it's
because
kind of
most traditions do have a fermented staple, don't they?
I think they all do. They would. You kind of have to, and I think particularly over winter when we need a lot more good immune health, we need really good gut bacteria to help that. And so fermented foods are an amazing way of getting that done. I love it. You get to the point where you can't survive without having it. Like you addicted to that tangy taste. I love it. Yeah, I know. Maybe I'm addicted to all food actually. A bit of food and sex. Yeah.
Yeah, but you make some wonderful things. So that's fantastic. So can we? I have some. I said to you they were going to be like quick questions, but no subject in nutrition or menopause is a quick subject, is it?
Especially with me answering them. I'm like, I can't answer things with one word answers, one sentence answers. I'm terrible, but I'll try.
But I'm a bit the same, but so we'll call them quick, but we'll say it's a lot more than one sentence. So with relation to women in menopause,
Yeah.
shall I go through them one by one or give them to you all at once?
Can be one by one because then I'll forget.
Okay, bloating.
Bloating. Yeah, so a lot of women develop bloating. And again, it comes down to not having good stomach acid I'm pointing to my throat, not sure why, to my stomach, is a lot of women don't have good stomach acid, which can then mean that our food doesn't break down as well and it will start fermenting in our digestive system. But also a lot of us aren't taking time to chew our food and kind of break it down. Because when we chew our food, that produces a lot of saliva. And that will be kind of like the messenger that goes to the stomach and says, hey, make some stomach acid for me. And so a lot of us are just kind of eating at our desk, going, no, like that, stuffing our face. But so if we could actually take the time to chew our food, would it be helpful? But also bloating can come from a lot of food intolerances can cause bloating. So kind of thinking about ones that may not be working for you. A lot of women struggle with gluten, well, not just women, men and women. And there's a prime one for bloating. So yeah, and it's about looking through all your foods and kind of doing some eliminations about which ones may be driving it up. But yeah, get your good chewing going on, good stomach acid, maybe with some apple cider vinegar with your meals, and then think about whether there's any foods that you may not be working with as a quick start. There's a lot of other reasons, but you want to stay on this video, then I'll be in a short. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. You can. I
know. I could do an hour just on that.
But when it just triggered in me another one.
Oh, yeah?
But when you were talking about food intolerances and sensitivities, they can increase too in midlife, can't they? One that can be quite problematic, in my experience, is dairy, because the enzyme that we use to process it isn't as efficient. Do you see that?
I do, and I haven't actually worked out the connection of why this is happening, but I see kind of the dairy, the gluten, and histamine, and you'll probably know the histamine connection, but high estrogen levels, which happen in perimenopause, actually drives up high histamine levels in our body.
Oh, I didn't know that. Really?
Yeah, and it's a bit of a feedback system too, because high histamine increases estrogen. So it kind of goes round and round. So then when we have foods that contain histamine, which are generally healthy, like spinach and nuts and seeds and things, they can then be too much, and high histamine in the body causes anxiety because it's a stimulating neurotransmitter as well. So a lot of women are having too much histamine, and it causes the itchy skin, as well as the dry skin that we get at that stage can cause that. So
which is crazy, mate.
Yeah, but in terms of the dairy, I definitely see an increase. I don't know why, and I'm a dairy farmer's daughter, so I hate telling people.
I knew you wouldn't like me asking it.
But I think a lot of people don't tolerate dairy, and I think you have to be honest with the symptoms your body may be expressing. So if you're getting that nasal drip, if you're humming all the time, or have a cough, or you've got looser stools, sometimes it can cause constipation too, though. But I find predominantly it says looser stools, and go, let's start with dairy. And when you do an elimination, particularly for dairy and gluten, you have to do it at least for 3 weeks because it takes that long to clear it out. So if you just do a few days and go, I don't notice any difference, it's not long enough. You have to go for much longer to know for sure that it isn't. But, dairy's all the good things in life, cheese, chocolate. So good luck. Once you kind of feel better, it's always easier to take those foods out when you start to notice a big difference. So, yeah, it's a good one.
That's amazing. People don't like hearing it.
No.
Cravings.
Yeah, so cravings, that's a biggie. So cravings can, I suffer those as well. And it's, sometimes cravings can just be a nutrient deficiency. So for example, when we're craving chocolate, usually PMS, for example, we're craving a lot of chocolate, and one of the reasons is it's high in magnesium, and also carbohydrates are needed to produce progesterone in a way too. So we crave a lot of, to make serotonin, we need carbohydrates for that, and we get low in serotonin when we get low in our hormones. So we can crave foods just because we actually need them in terms of what they may provide for us in nutrients. So that is one thing. And also we can't deny that sometimes we just start habits that we, have had so long that we start to get used to having that food regularly, that we want it. And I think sugar is one of the hardest ones to remove. And it's, they say it's harder than heroin, and it is, because you don't pull up to the service station and have an injection of heroin sitting there. You've got like 50,000 displays of pretty chocolate to look at you. It's everywhere. And I think in our cultures, we've kind of had people go, why, just once you can have it. And yeah, you can, but it's not just this once, it's kind of constant. So we get into habits of things as well. So, I always look at getting in, obviously I'm biased because I'm a nutritionist, but I always think get your nutrients up and then see what your body's still craving. Yeah. And that makes a big difference.
See, that's interesting too. And there's insulin. I know we don't have time to talk about that today, but there's that.
Oh yeah, with the blood sugar management, insulin. Yeah, totally.
And cholesterol, because cholesterol, this is a question from one of our members in the Facebook group, 40 Plus Ageless Goddesses. She wanted to know how cholesterol is affected in menopause.
Oh, great question. And it's huge. Like, I can look at women's bloods, because I have clients for some time now, and they can see their bloods before menopause and then menopause, and they're like two different people. One of the things that goes up is cholesterol. And so just like when you go through puberty and we have all these new genes switching on for that stage of life, for breast development, for periods happening, etc., when we go through menopause, we have the same thing. It's kind of like second puberty in a way, in that we have all these genes switching on and off. And one of the ones is promotion of inflammation, basically, in our body, and it drives up cholesterol and it drives up our blood sugars. So, with this, we can often see that a woman who've had perfectly healthy cholesterol all their life go to menopause, and then all of a sudden the LDL, which is nicknamed the bad cholesterol, just goes woof up in the air. I've done a whole podcast on cholesterol because, our measurements that we use for cholesterol in our bloods probably aren't telling us enough of the picture. So do listen to that one if you're interested in your cholesterol. But the biggest factor we can do to reduce cholesterol when we get to this age is reduce our blood sugars. So sugars are the biggest driver of cholesterol. We've been told in our life prior that fat drives up, saturated fat drives up our cholesterol, but it's only a very small amount, and it's actually blood sugars that will drive up our cholesterol. So getting those managed is the biggest key to getting your cholesterol down. And, obviously, when you look at there's other options like hormone replacement therapy and things like that can help with managing our cardiovascular health in general as well. So there's other tools, but it's definitely a thing. It's definitely so I think that's sometimes more reliable than using the FSH, follicle stimulating hormone test, to test for perimenopause. Is just check someone's cholesterol out, and that's going to be like, yep, you're there. Yeah. No, it's amazing.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. It's incredible. Like, so many things change in that time. It's a massive shift.
And that whole blood sugars thing, but I mean, that is a huge subject.
Yeah, I know.
But, so have I worn you out?
No, I know you're good. Whew, I feel like I've been on test. I'm like, have I passed? No, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. We're going to have another one of these. Would you be into that?
Oh, totally. I'm like, any excuse to have a chat. Like, I honestly always feel like I have to pay people to listen to me, because I'm like, anywhere I get an opportunity to chat, I love it. So good. There's so much. I think when you start talking about health, there's just so many areas that you can go into.
I think so, and it's fascinating. And I love that we live in a wellness revolution right now.
I know, it's so good. And then just have the focus on actually the stage of life we're at as well, and what we can do to help in all the areas. It's not just about hormones. It's like things you were saying, your cholesterol, your blood sugars, your moods, your energy. It's just like looking at all these areas and
big picture.
Yeah, but there's heaps you can do. Like, I think that's the exciting bit. We don't have to be stuck here.
I know, that's the wonderful thing. There's heaps of support, and the more knowledge we get, the better off we are, and we can manage this whole menopausal journey too. Okay? And I'm going to put it all in the show notes and things, but let's tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, so I've got a website, vinka.co.nz, Vinka.
Easy.
I know. So there, and then on that, I've got some podcasts, lots of recipes, and I've got my Facebook and Insta pages as well, which is Vinka Nutrition. So yeah, I know. So it's exciting because I share all my kind of things I'm learning as I go, from garden to health to nutrition to hormones, and yeah, where I'm speaking and what I'm doing. So
Which
thank
is
you.
cool.
Yeah.
And that garden.
I know. I'm going to do more garden tours one day. That's my next project. I love them. Yeah. So no, it's good.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.